This is Generoso, and welcome to Cooking with Generoso. And what we're going to do is minestrone. Now, every place I've ever gone, minestrone is a little tiny bit different. Some people put pasta in their minestrone. Some people put meat in their minestrone, and that's completely fine. This is not a vegetarian household. If it was, this would be a very safe dish. In fact, by definition, it's about as vegetarian as you're going to get in any Italian cuisine. We're going to start off with what you're going to need to make my family's version of minestrone, and I think people really like it, and hopefully you'll like it too. So some of the ingredients you're going to need, we actually procured some really big carrots today. So normally you would need about 4 or 5 normal carrots. These are 2 gigantic carrots. About 4 potatoes. They're going to make the base of the soup and add to the creaminess. A whole onion. Some imported peeled tomatoes, a couple cans of white kidney beans. These are Italian, so they say fagioli, cannellini, but these are just white kidney beans. Salt and pepper, courtesy of our friend Bob Raffi. Some actual fresh garlic from his garden, which I very much appreciate. Fresh spinach, which I picked up today. A couple of knives and a peeler. And, of course, a couple of cutting boards. And then the last thing, and I think everyone needs, is a really big sauce pot. And we're going to use all this to make some really groovy things. We've done a little bit of prep work. We have taken one of these and turned it into this. 5 really beautiful. I got to give Bob Raffi credit, by the way. This is absolutely beautiful garlic. We've taken off the outer layer of the onion, peeled 4 potatoes, and I've removed the outside of the carrot with the peeler. And now we're going to chop up the potatoes into small chunks. We're going to chip the carrots. We're going to mince this garlic. And then we're going to chop up the onion. And we'll see you in a minute. So now Lily and I have done a lot of peeling and chopping to give you an idea of what we've done. So the garlic has been minced very finely, and I want to thank our dear friend Chris, our best man, for these knives from Germany because they are absolutely beautiful for chopping. So that's been minced. As you can see, the onions have been nice and like diced. A little bit of spinach there. The potatoes have been cut into decent sized segments. They'll break down pretty easily once the heat hits them. The spinach has been soaking in water. It's been rinsed once and now rinsed again. I've actually shredded the spinach, so it should be broken apart in this manner. Lily's been nice enough to cut the carrot chips. You want to cut these much thinner than the potatoes because obviously carrots being a little bit more firm are going to need more time to break down inside the sauce pot. I've unlidded my tomatoes and my cannellini beans. And in a few seconds, we are going to start cooking.
And you've drained the liquid from the cannellini beans.
And I've drained the liquid from the cannellini beans. So now, if you can examine this, I've put the flame on medium heat. And this is a nice, thick bottom sauce pot. So it could take a bit of heat, but you want to keep it on medium. Get your olive oil and move in a little bit, Lily, if you don't mind. Really fill the bottom with a lot of oil. And you're going to warm that up. Make sure that the oil's warm before we go to the next step. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to put the onions, the carrots, and the potatoes in first with the garlic and let that braise. And we're going to braise for the first few minutes. Make sure they actually get a little bit of a burn on them and scrape. What's really nice about our minestrone is it has a smoky quality to it, and that smoky quality comes from the braising. So we're going to work on that in just a little bit. So the oil's been heating for about 3 minutes, and now we're going to put in our carrots. Onions, our potatoes, and our garlic, and a liberal amount of black pepper and salt. And here's kind of the physical part of this. It's going to be burning at the bottom. The oil is very, very hot. And we're going to continue to stir about every like 30 or 40 seconds. We're going to try to scrape the bottom because obviously the potatoes and the carrots are going to be braising on the bottom of the pot. It has a very pretty color if you can look inside the pot, Lily. And just as we start to get a braise in about another minute or two, you're going to start to see some of the potatoes browning up a little bit. We're going to add the spinach to that mixture. So the potatoes, carrots, onions, garlic, salt, pepper. This has been cooking for about 8 or 9 minutes now. A lot of the water is dissipating. And Lily, if you could be so kind, grab the spoon. And I want you to describe what it feels like as you scrape the bottom.
So the potatoes are sticking a tiny, tiny bit, but overall everything's moving nicely. There's nothing that's super sticky. The water is starting to kind of fade off, and this is starting to feel a little bit more like a stew because the carrots are breaking down and some of the potato edges are breaking down.
Cool. We're going to continue doing this for about the next 4 or 5 minutes. And again, we're going to add the spinach very shortly after that.
And you were saying that it should be charred on the edges? Is that what it is?
Well, it's really braised. I mean, so what really makes this minestrone taste different is it has a smokiness to it. And that smokiness is actually going to come from the braising that's going to happen between now and when we add the spinach. And so the little bit of burned ends on the potatoes and the onions, that's going to add to the smokiness.
So I think we've been cooking for maybe about 4 or 5 more minutes.
You got it.
And almost all of the water is gone, and it's starting to feel like a paste.
And it's burning a little bit. We don't want the potatoes to break down too much at this stage. So this is where we stick in the spinach.
Espinaca.
You can see we have thoroughly rinsed out our spinach. It's nice and stripped. I'm just going to add it directly to this mixture.
Pretty and green.
It's very green, and this is very fresh spinach. And of course, now we're going to fold it into the mixture and continue to braise. That spinach is also going to add a bit of a char taste once it starts to cook up. Nice and mixed in. Takes a little bit of elbow grease on this one, but it'll break down very nicely. So it's been about another 6 minutes. The spinach is broken down. A lot of the water's dissipated, and like Lily said, it's kind of getting more of a pasty feeling. So it's charred, I think, a decent amount. We're gonna add.
Look at all that steam.
It's a beautiful steam. We're gonna add our peeled tomatoes. Take a look at this. The whole thing. We're going to add both cans of cannellini beans. And then I'm going to add 2 cans of water. After all, this is a soup. But a lot of this water is going to cook out. Give it a couple more stirs. And you want to break the tomatoes down a little bit when you stir as well. You don't really necessarily want to add puree because you want some of the consistency of the tomatoes to stay inside the soup. So usually you smash them against the edge. And that's your base, and that's basically what is everything that's in minestrone. So we're going to show it being cooked at various stages. It's now 8:06, as the clock will say. We're going to check in on Mr. Soup in about another 15 minutes, and you're going to notice changes in color and consistency as we continue to cook the soup. So I've kept this covered just with my cutting board to allow a little bit of space for some of the steam to get out. Tomatoes are still fairly intact. We're gonna crush them a little bit more. And as you can see, it's been boiling at a decent temperature. It's starting to turn a little bit more orange. What we're gonna eventually go for is we're gonna go for something that isn't soupy as much as it is like a stew. So we're gonna keep stirring for about another minute. Some of the water is cooked off, so it's a little bit more resistant to the spoon. And we're gonna check in again. It's 8:23. We're gonna look at this again at about let's say 8:40, just to see what it looks like. It's still on medium flame, as we can see. And give it a couple more twirls. And always make sure that you're running against the bottom in case some of the potatoes are still sticking. So I'm gonna lower the flame a little bit so it simmers now. It's been boiling for about 30 minutes, 35 minutes. As you can see, the carrots are starting to break down, the tomatoes are broken down, and you're getting this nice kind of like pumpkin-y orange color.
It's very orange.
It is. And let's take a look at the flame. I've lowered it to a little less than medium. Still giving it some stirs every now and then. But it's coming along nicely. A little bit more of the water is dissipated. And again, we're getting more of a kind of a thicker quality. And what we're going for is more of a stew and less a soup. So it is exactly 1 hour since we put all of our ingredients into the pot. Everything is breaking down nicely. As you can tell, potatoes are pretty much whittled down. Carrots are tiny. Spinach is you know, left down to a few strands. And it's getting a real nice thickness to it. We're going to let this cook for another 20 minutes. And then we're going to take it off the flame. And you want to at least have it sit for about 10 minutes after you take it off the flame before you would consider serving it. You want it to kind of firm up just a little tiny bit more. In our house, occasionally my mom would mix this with risotto rice. At the very end, like put some inside a bowl and then put the minestrone on top. I don't think that's necessary though. I think the soup stands by itself. I took it off the flame about 10 minutes ago. As you can see pretty clearly, it's this really beautiful orange color. The carrots have completely broken down, so have most of the potatoes. It's nice and thick. It's not watery like a lot of minestrones. There's a lot of body to the soup. So, as poor Lily's been waiting for 2 hours.
That's okay.
A lot of the cannellini beans too have also broken down. I'm going to take the soup, as it's this beautiful bright color, add a little bit of romano. And there you have it. You have minestrone the way the Führer does it.